Good morning. Happy birthday to me. Zach Shvat, the 27th, the purity of Shvat, the 11th month when the Rebbe took his leadership on the 11th day of the 11th year. I want to learn with you. It's my birthday. I'm inspired. I want to study this with you. It's a mimer of the Mittler Rebbe about Parshas Zachor, which is coming up, to remember that we have to blot out Amalek. What does that mean? Could you imagine such evil that has to be completely annihilated? Who could imagine such a thing? But we see it before our eyes every single day. So may God give them a speedy welcome, not them. They should have a welcome to down under, and I don't mean Australia. The mitzvah to annihilate even the memory of Amalek. You're supposed to remember. How do you remember to annihilate a memory? No, you annihilate the evil that is outward, that seeks to destroy us. That is our enemy. And what's the promise after we complete that sacred mission? We're going to go into the Holy Land. The truth is, the mitzvah is only incumbent after we've gone in. But thematically, there is the concept of destroying your enemy and then going into the land as it was in the conquest of the times of Yeshua. If people say that we're colonists, then I didn't say that right. If people think that, we were into the divine conquest of taking the land back from the people who conquered it before us, right? And then we have this whole debate, who came first? There was actually some dispute in the Torah as to, was the land inherited through Shem, the ancestor of Avraham, or was it originally given to Canaan, and we're therefore, the Ivri means on the other side, right? The Ivri is in this sense, the Hebrew means that we came from the other side, and therefore we've come here to conquer. Well, Mashiach's going to conquer the world through peacefulness, and that peacefulness involves taking on a peaceful mind, and a peaceful mind looks a lot like that. These are very deep concepts, and they're embedded in the Torah's imagery, which is flowing with milk and honey. The land is described in the Torah that Hashem took us down. I'll read it to you. Hashem said, I have seen the poverty of my nation in Egypt. I will go down to save them and bring them up to a land that's good and expansive, to a land that's flowing with milk. Thank you. Flowing with milk and honey. And this gets into the milk and honey of it. In this incredible mimer, when everything becomes so tangible in the world of the heart. When the world of the heart is described, what a healthy heart looks like, what does it think about? What does it feel in response to those thoughts? The thoughts are all rooted in verses in the Torah. Everything stems from the written Torah and the oral tradition, which gives the context of how we're going to look at this written document. And that gets much more personable through the ages, when it can be, the interpretations become interpreted by our holy sages of our present generations. So that type of unpacking of a divine statement is filled with flavor, flowing literally with milk and honey. So it says there that I will gather you and bring you up from the poverty of Egypt to the land of the Canaani. There is a type of conquest here, Eretz Zavas Kol Vash, which flows with milk and honey. That the inference here, the Mittler Rebbe writes, is that he went down to uplift us from the poverty of Egypt, which is the ultimate state of shiftless, of lowliness. Egypt was Ervas Haaretz, the confrontation with the nakedness of the world. It's no longer nude, it becomes naked. Egypt was like that, fetishizing things that are meant to be private. So there's a very lowly, degenerate quality that the Torah describes here. And since we were there for 210 years as the Jewish people, we became impoverished in da'as. Ein ani ela b'da'as. Poor only means of mind, your interpretation. Shenikva lachmanya, and that's why we eat the bread of affliction on Pesach, because we were poor in mind. We were drawn down into the poverty of the constricting space of the addictions of Mitzrayim. And from there, we're meant to go to a land flowing with milk and honey. So it's also very visceral and delightful, but in a holy sense. It's a good and expansive land, which is the ultimate upliftedness, the Mittler Rebbe says here. Begadlis v'achava, in a magnanimous experience, a state of greatness, very exhilarating, and harchava, which means it affects every aspect of your involvements, bespashtus, and out there. Shezeo gidul beribui hakelim de Knesset Yisrael. That means that our experience is all-encompassing, the entire spectrum of experience. In going into the land, we're meant to go into a world that has a lot of drama and stories. You get involved with all kinds of narratives in this world. If you were just in Tachlis Apshitas, the ultimate simplicity of God's full awareness and infiniteness, that you would never be able to experience having children, getting married, doing tshuva. There would be nothing. So God creates a world where there's a lot of pieces on the table that are moved around in different ways. That's the dynamics with all the things we encounter. In short, 613, that's our crown, the 620 mitzvahs with the rabbinical 7 to add to the 620, which equals crown, keser. And that's the way our story unravels. We have a world to interact with. We have a land to live in. It's not, so we have, it's not a conflict here. The world of Achdus Apshuta is not meant to stay in conflict with the infinite experience and overt awareness of the oneness of everything, because Hashem is everything. Is not meant to be at odds with the idea that you live in a variegated experience, your experience different from your neighbor, and we all fit together. That's not meant to be in conflict. Ultimately, the true sweetness, when the earth doesn't swallow us up, like Korach and his evil congregation were saying. No. The Meraglim were saying that. Pardon me. The spies that were sent into the land said, we can't go there. If we go there, we'll lose this. We're in the clouds here in the desert. They lived in clouds for 40 years, literally. And they learned and they davened. They were very holy. But now we're going to till the earth and have like towns where people hang out. And what are they going to do with that town? Is there going to be a tavern there? Is there going to be inner conflict that we still have to contend with? So they opted to stay out. They wanted to stay spiritual. But when you attain a state that's influenced by something that's higher than that whole spectrum between recognition of God's oneness and the experience of the mundanity of the world, when you crack out of it and say that's all part of the divine plan, then what you do is you take the highest part of the top of the pyramid into all the variegated experiences and the multiplicity of the world. The unity and oneness, Echad and Yachid, become one also. So there's no conflict. I just want you to bear that in mind as we make this dichotomy. You don't want to say they're in conflict. No, you go there to beyond the system to uplift the entire system from head to tail becoming equal. Once they become equal, then everything is connected to the infinity and unity of Hashem. Everything is purposeful, meaningful, and exactly where it's supposed to be. So when we go down into the obligatory Egypt, the experience of the limitation and the constriction of awareness of this unity, that is an impoverishment of mind. But we're meant to go. God takes us to a land flowing with milk and honey, expansive. Expansive meaning permeating all levels of our experience, which is the opposite of what they had. In Egypt, it says they had Keitzer Ruach, Me'avoida Kasha. They were short of breath from hard work. Physical labor to embed people into the physical. The tribe of Levi was able to come and go as they pleased. They were not enslaved. They were the teaching class, and that was recognized by the Egyptians. So we had a representative, the tribe of Levi, to maintain the heights of spiritual service that kept us going to a large degree in those difficult times. So when we're impoverished of mind, the body is what calls to the mind to take us away from higher pursuits. And we get stuck there in the physical, So the Keitzer Ruach, the loss of breath, Shelo yachol lekabel me'uma, you're not receptive at that point. So they went out from that impoverishment of being drawn away from things that had deeper purpose. Even Maslow would agree with that. And they weren't able to, therefore, take in anything higher. The zerak mibchinas nekudas halev, the katnus de amuna hanal. And this is only because at the depths of their heart, they had a very basic level of faith. Here it describes katnus as amuna, Damuna, the smallness of faith, or the lack of faith is really not meant to say a lack. It's just the beginning stage. Faith is the first step. That you have to start everything with faith and build on there, else you're not going to build it in the right place. So this is something that was described earlier in the Mimer that is a very topic unto itself. So coming from that faith, when you brought into the land, you only go out from Egypt with the merit of faith, but you're brought into a land, which means that you could take that faith, which is a non-awareness, but just a trust. You don't see anymore. You did see at Mount Sinai, but before that, where were we coming from? We were coming from the most deprived state of slavery. It's hard to imagine a Jew as a slave because we've asserted ourselves against all odds everywhere we go. The opposite of a slave who just gets dragged around wherever you're told to, whatever his pen goes, he goes. Not his pen as in this, that frees us, right? I wonder if they took the pens away from the Jews there. Like they did in the other, yeah. So we're brought out of an impoverished state of mind into an expansive world where it's not just faith-based, but you've experienced it and allow that experience to affect you and therefore help you understand things that are happening now. Even when we're working the land, it's flowing with milk and honey, meaning all the spiritual things that we're going to get to, which is really the topic what I wanted to get to, but it's taking some time to get there. Maybe we'll have a series, maybe we'll start something good out of this. But the spirit, it sounds like a physical description, flowing with milk and honey. Milk means you have a lot of cattle and sheep and goats and stuff, right? Domestic, like the bovine community is represented there. And you have honey, which comes from trees, because it's date trees. I guess they had a lot of date palm branches that must have looked like Miami. So does anyone see the difference between the date palms that grow there and the ones across the planet. I don't know. But flowing with milk and honey is a very physical thing. But here we're going to talk about the most spiritual, the desire of the soul to immerse yourself in the tasty world of flowing with milk and honey. And what that means. First, it starts with the honey. And the milk is, I think, the next step. But before that in the verse, it talks about taking us to this broad and expansive land. And that's where the Aveda, the pathway of working on ourselves, begins in this. So we go from faith into an expansive state of application. When faith is applied, then you can experience. If you really believe that there's a ghost in the room when you're a kid, you run to your parents' bed, and that's it. It was real. If Casper was real to the kid, enough to get him motivated to run to his parents' bed, that's a real thing. So faith becomes, through da'as, it becomes an awareness that it becomes tangible. So flowing with milk and honey, we'll see that it actually becomes, even though it's very philosophical, it becomes expressed in the most real ways. And that's how you know that you're really tapping into something, is that when it affects you in the physical, when you're davening, your heart physically is beating faster. If it's not, if you don't feel the weight of the tefillin on your arm and your head, then you have not really fulfilled the mitzvah. Thank you. I appreciate your birthday wishes. I take that to heart, and can't wait to celebrate yours. The season's coming. Children have birthday seasons. So also you do that by doing physical things. You do mitzvahs in many different ways, and that's called kelim rabim, oiros v'kelim rabim. There's light, which means energy, conscious awareness, and there's kelim, there's vessels to contain that. That's all the things that you do. So you bring the light, your intent, your conscious awareness, your kavana into an experience, and you have both. You have oiros v'kelim rabim. So the point here is that there's a lot of things there's a lot of random things that could happen, that one guy becomes a carpenter, another guy a tailor. In those days, my grandfather was a tailor, God bless his soul. Grandpa Joe from Kitchener. So that's why it says, Revava kitsemach hasadeh, to be expansive, to be a big number, Revava, like a sprouting field, which it means, well, I have a child named Tzamach, sprouting, blossoming, and flourishing, and that pertains to Mashiach, Ish Tzamach Shmai. His name is Tzamach, because he's going to bring this blooming of consciousness from the poverty of the constricted world of Egypt into the experience of the plenty of an expansive land and flowing with milk and honey. And that causes us to increase, multiply, and mature to godly. Like a grapevine journeys from Egypt. Herim tzila, it lifts up its shade, its shadow. V'i sa'id. Now this is the part I really wanted to get to. V'i sa'id el eretz zavas chalav u'dvash. So it's not only expansive, meaning it affects all of our experience, and as I was trying to explain, but it flows with milk and honey. Shehu aliyah oid l'mayla yiseh. This is even a higher ascent. More so than when we describe the land that's good and expansive. The ribuya kelim, which the multiplicity of experiences you can have. Ve'inyan the bechinas hasaga b'tuv tam v'das ad she'is anag alavaya. And this is talking about the flowing with milk and honey is called the very well integrated understanding of the reason and the das connecting with the idea until what happens? You take pleasure on something completely divine, and it's not a flavor of ice cream, but it's even that. That's called to take pleasure upon Hashem, and we're going to see it's even higher than God's name, Hashem, what we're referring to here. But murgash hasaga, felt in mind. So the mind is this cold thing, right? But it's murgash behasaga, that's felt in the idea. In other words, the mind is inherently cold, as it says in Hayom Yom. B'murgash behasaga, felt in mind, or in the idea, v'zeu b'chinas pnimius bina, and that's when you reach the depths of bina. God bless my dear wife who just reached 40 years. I spoke about bina and her thing. I'm going to try and get the clip and put it up. But Aimek HaMusag, in delving into the profundity of what is understood of Gadlus Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the greatness of the infinite. That's like an oxymoron. If it's infinite, you can't call it great. It's beyond description. It's infinite. K'may hanishamas b'Gan Eden. Like the souls in the Garden of Eden, Masigin v'nehenin chulu maziva shchina. What do they do there in the garden? They have a land that's flowing with milk and honey spiritually, which is what we're describing here. Because in heaven, they're all souls. They don't really have bodies, but they experience a garden of their own in the sense of understanding and taking pleasure in that understanding. V'gam b'chinas hareichav shel hasaga v'das b'ribui hahesper. And also he goes back to the first theme of reichav, an expansiveness of awareness in the extent, the ribui, how prolific this awareness unfolds in us in a way that's just endless, become a fanim shining with all different facets. That's what we mean, that conscious light fills different vessels, different experiences, different things. Okay, that's the first thing. Then it's going to segue back to flowing with milk and honey. Which is the supernal delight, which illuminates the understanding with an expansiveness of experiences. Like a ribuy akelim, when you want me to call it vessels, we'll think I'm talking about like sailing. But what do we really mean? We're talking about the reasons behind why we do what we do. Shehen Seidei Satera, which is the secrets of the Torah. The only way we really understand ourselves, Freud, is through the Torah. I think that's what the Rebbe Rashab was sent to try and tell Dr. Freud. Shemiskalim Bahasaga Babina, that becomes, these secrets of Torah are processed by your capacity to understand things, called Bina, Bivareikav Gadol, in a great expansiveness. Ki Yiduash is the scholars Atikyemim Bebina, Bereikav Das Davka. I stuttered on Das because we just said Bina. But when you're misbainen, when you apply understanding, which is called being misbainen, same word, Bina Hispaininus, it results in presence of mind, Das. So it gives birth, right? The Chabad is the mothers who give birth, the three mothers, they give birth to the 7 emotional states. So mind gives rise to emotional response. Das. Which is associated with the Levi, the world of Bina. Bisbaininus is the world of the Levi. Why? Because he sings and plays music. Huda al atik yemim. So that is the highest level, the crown, the Atikim, the ancient one. The crown is expressed through the song, which is Bina. Bina is a song, we'll see why. Shalevim bez baininus besaga, the Mittler writes that the Levim, in meditating and coming to an understanding of ideas, shalahem, what do they do with that? They don't give a pillful or a dissertation. Watch what they do. That is drawn from the supernal delight through their song. So they actually don't give it. They're thinking about very deep ideas, and it's expressed through the 5 years of training that they had, obligatory, before they could play in the band in the Holy Temple. So the supernal delight comes out through the Levi song, meaning that through meditation, through Bina, through Hisbaininus, you give rise to Da'as. Da'as is the awareness, the perception of, the ability to channel or manifest the divine pleasure in what you're thinking. So you're misplaining on something, you bring the awareness of the divine pleasure, and it comes out as song. Da'as is like a type of song then. It's in a presence of mind that's not the thought itself, but it's a chariot for that thought. So your experience of Da'as is an emotional response that's channeling holy ideas. Let that suffice for now. I really didn't get to the part which has to do with my birthday. And I'll explain to you why. I think I'm going to have to do a part 2. I have to daven, but I'm going out to celebrate tonight. Try and find me if you can. And I want to give the second part of this because it's more than the birthday. That's like the foundation for the part 2. So the Levi is the part 1. The Levi has to transcend himself. Why? Because Levi is Bina. That's 40. What does a Levi do? Thank you. What does a Levi do when he turns 50? Right? My wife just turned 40, God bless her. 40 is Bina. So you start 10 years of Bina. What happens at 50, at the 50th gate of Bina? Nun Share Bina, there's only 50. How do you get to the 50th? To make it to, even from the 39th to the 40th, it corresponds to the 40 labors minus 1. If you're missing 1, you're not quite there. When you're at 49, that's considered chayla. It's called the gematria of illness. Why? You've achieved everything you can. 49. We count on the Sfiras HaEmer. 7 times 7 is 49. 7 weeks. We count 49. We can only reach 49 from our count. What about Hashem's count? The 50th gate. We come to Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and receive the Torah. So the Shar Nun is not just Bina, which is 40. We have all the way to 49. When you get to 50, I'm turning 54, please God. Actually, I did. I could thank God, rather. Thank you for helping me to this day, Hashem. And from 49 to 50 is also this type of jump to a new service. At 50, you have Eitzah, you have advice. What do you have? From 40 to 49, the Aveda is like the Levi, to being a Hisbainan and singing a song or playing the guitar, whatever you do. I guess it was a lute in those days. So grabbing your lute and running with it. So your Bina and Das go hand in hand out through the song. What happens at 50? The 50th gate is when you achieve the 32 Nesivais Chochmah. So the heart is 32 in Gematria because it receives from 32 chambers of your brain, right? So the brain has a heart in it. In that sense, it empowers the heart with the 32 paths of wisdom. So you move from Bina to Chochmah. And at Chochmah, that's tonight's class. I hope to see you there. Let's aim for, it's hard to plan this when you got like dinners and stuff. Let's aim for like 7 o'clock to 7:30. No. Yes, 7 o'clock to 7:30. Hope to see you there.